when I first did my training, I was in audit in accountancy, and someone said to me, and I was heavily pregnant in the office, going, if I didn't come back to work after maternity, what would I do? And someone said to me, well, what mums do if they can't be a proper accountant is they become a bookkeeper. Now,
Ouch.
yeah, at the time, I mean, I was 21, 22 at the time, and it didn't bother me at the time. Now I'm like, oh my God, that definitely has created a fire in my belly over the years.
Hello and welcome back to the Director First podcast. My name is Chris Worden, and today I am joined by Jo and Zoe of the Figure Bookkeepers. Ladies, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be interviewed for a change. We're usually on the other side.
Well, for those that haven't come across you, what's the mission behind the Figure Bookkeepers?
Well, about 20 years ago, I became a bookkeeper because work didn't work for me. And well, actually, my son's going to turn 22 next month. So it's 22 years I started my own bookkeeping business. And I realized that I had the skills. I knew how to do the actual work, but I didn't know how to run a business. And I think there's a misconception that bookkeepers and accountants are really good at business. They're not. So it took quite a while for me to self-discovery, making lots of mistakes. And in 2019, I saw Zoe speak on stage, and I was at the point where I was like, I really want to share my message to more people about how bookkeepers can grow profitable businesses that are also flexible and that can work around your family, but you don't have to shy away and just make it small. You can be ambitious and build a six-figure business from your kitchen table. So me and Zoe joined forces. We started the Bookkeepers podcast, and basically we teach you everything you didn't get taught at college about running a business while building flexibility. And also the beauty of that is we can pass all these skills on to our clients and be like the best bookkeeper ever.
What was Zoe doing on the stage? What was she speaking about?
Well, I mean, Jo was on the stage as well. It was just that I went first. So we were at a bookkeepers conference. This was probably 2019. And Jo was there because she had decided to start a six-figure bookkeeping practice from her kitchen table. Jo had just been made redundant at the time and needed to replace that income. So you were like, this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I've learned in the past. And this is what that means for my new business. And I had just written a book called Know Your Numbers. And I think that was quite an unusual thing for a bookkeeper to do. I was quite focused on, I knew that personal brand was my key to finding my clients. So that was a marketing tool for me. And I spoke, it was a short talk, wasn't it, Jo? It was maybe like 15, 20 minutes. I just spoke about like how we should be setting bigger goals for ourselves. And unfortunately, what we find with our community and lots of mums in business, because bookkeeping seems to be a job or a business that we create because we want flexibility and we see it as this kind of flexible work option. And because we see it as a flexible work option and we are able to do it from home, we decide it doesn't have as much value and we don't choose to set ourselves goals. And that is a huge problem with women particularly, but with freelancers generally as a community. So I was speaking about that, and I think Jo just thought, oh, she like also gets it. She gets the mission that I have, and we connected there.
What I've enjoyed about your content, and again, I think a mutual friend recommended that I reach out to you, and I started to have a listen, have a watch, read the posts that you're putting on there, LinkedIn and such like. And even though your community is bookkeepers, I mean, I've got a really young family. I've got one that's on the way, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old. And I really enjoyed listening to what you were saying. And the principles that you're actually talking about would work in Hull for a butcher, a builder, and a candlestick maker. It's just so happens that obviously your community is bookkeepers. What was going on in your lives when you decided to sort of make this happen? We've mentioned redundancies, but take us back to when this all started.
So when I first did my training, I was in audit in accountancy, and someone said to me, and I was heavily pregnant in the office, going, if I didn't come back to work after maternity, what would I do? And someone said to me, well, what mums do if they can't be a proper accountant is they become a bookkeeper. Now,
Ouch.
yeah, at the time, I mean, I was 21, 22 at the time, and it didn't bother me at the time. Now I'm like, oh my God, that definitely has created a fire in my belly over the years. Because if someone was to say that to my daughter, like I would fight. But back then, I just wanted freedom, and I just wanted to be at home with my baby, and I just needed to earn money. So I was like, okay, I'm up for that. I didn't feel that I was an expert and deserved this massive career. But now I see women that come into our community that have been like CFO level or have managed, they've been at the boardroom table in the C-suite, they have a baby, and then they think, oh, I'll become this little version of myself. And we're like, you've got so much to give. But the reason I became so passionate was that I did keep messing it up, so much so that I burnt out massively. I had there was a point in 2015 where I had I think I was on the operating table like 4 or 5 times in 18 months. Even spinal surgery, emergency surgery, where they thought I actually might die. And that was all stress. That was all because I didn't know how to run a business. And I had 3 little kids at the time. I didn't feel like I was being a good mum. Didn't feel like I was being a good boss. I wasn't being a good bookkeeper, business leader. I felt like I was failing, definitely not a good wife, like failing everywhere. And I had no money in the bank, and my body was like screaming at me. And it was all because I didn't know how to run a business. So that's where the passion has come from, because if I can help one other person not get to that point, then I've done a good job. It just so happens, like you said, Chris, like what we teach could be for anybody. And that's why it is transferable to all of the clients we deal with. But in business, if you try and speak to everyone, you speak to nobody. And me and Zoe were running bookkeeping practices, and we knew that they really needed our help. And we also knew that no one spoke to us. In my whole 20-year journey before I got to that point, everyone was like, join this accountants club, or there's a club over here for accountants, or if you want to learn accountants how to build your practice. No one spoke to bookkeepers because they didn't think they were worth it. They didn't think that there was enough value in that community, or that they actually wanted it. And that's why we chose to reach out and speak directly to them.
Quite a few people missed the trick then there, girls, didn't they?
Well, you see it all the time, you know, like when we see software, some software, Xero, for example, will only talk to, if they're talking to accountants, they always talk to bookkeepers as well. They talk about A's and B's. So you always see them side by side. But there's lots of software. There have been lots of conferences who talk very much to accountants. And actually, you know, when we look at the size of our community now, we did a piece of work where we looked at what the combined turnover of our paid membership community was. They've got about £10 million of turnover. Now, if you think of that as an accountancy practice, they would be like a large regional practice. And so they do have buying power, but we've got to sort of start to help software vendors notice that, and actually for the bookkeepers themselves to understand it about themselves. Like, you actually are growing a really valid business that has potential. It's time for people to listen to you.
So in my industry, I mean, I have introducers, that are bookkeepers, accountants, and what I find is when a bookkeeper rings me and goes, Chris, my client has this problem, because they've spotted it a lot sooner than the accountant, we can generally get in there and go, okay, well, right, we need to stop doing this. We need to speak to HMRC. We need to restructure that. We need to do some deals with creditors, maybe look at some short-term cash. And the amount of insolvencies after an introduction to, and I don't know have the stats for this, I should have done really, but it's not a lot. It's a lot of advisory work. Whereas if I get a call off an accountant, he's just done the year end from 18 months ago, and he's gone, Chris, Rome's burning. We need to put it through a process. And people they just don't get I know this is going to sound a crazy question, right? But I have to break it down really simple. Tell us, what's the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper?
Chris, thank you for asking. Do you know what? we get asked this every single week. And you know, a lot of the time it's from accountants, because they know that in their firm, they offer the whole service maybe, but they're like, but what is the difference? Because actually the process is very similar, but it's about who does it and when. It's a lot about timing. So a bookkeeper helps with the day-to-day transactions, processes. They help to process the sales invoices, the purchase invoices. They may make payments, they reconcile the bank accounts, they make sure that they chase the creditors. They are speaking, they can create management reports, they can do everything. They can figure out how much your corporation tax is going to be at the end of the year on a monthly basis. They can tell you how much to put aside for VAT. They can process the payroll. They run the finance function of the business. And then what tends to happen is that at the end of the year, when they've done all their stuff, the accountant will come in, look at what's over that whole year, and then create tax returns and year-end accounts. Maybe they'll do the annual return, those kind of things. Maybe they will plan out with the directors what they're going to take on as a salary next year and do some tax planning. So it's very much the compliance.
If they're a good accountant, by the way, most of them don't even do that.
No, if you're a good accountant, absolutely. Now, and this is where software and automation, AI, like me, Zoe is a qualified accountant. I am level 4 AAT, which you can call yourself an accountant. I just choose to call myself. And we have a lot of people that are trained as accountants, but doing this work because they want to have those relationships. They want to be in the business. Exactly what you said. We want to make a difference. We can change. We can make a difference in businesses that if you were looking back, like you said, to old data, you can only report on what's happened and maybe make suggestions for the future. But bookkeepers can change how that year end looks if they bring it up. Now, our job, Zoe and I's job, is to make them realize what they have at their fingertips. Because in the past, when I've been a bookkeeper and I used to do the VAT returns, I used to hand over the reports, and I never said anything. We talk about, you know, when you're in hospital, when you're having your obs done, and the nurse comes over and she checks your temperature and she checks your blood pressure and she checks your SATs, and she writes it all down, and then she doesn't say anything. She walks away. She doesn't give you a plan of action. And then we have to wait for the doctor to come in and write the prescription and tell you what you're going to do. That's typically been that kind of relationship. But bookkeepers with software and insights and reporting and how it's all, they can see what's going on and they can speak up. So that's where me and Zoe come in to teach them, give them confidence to know that they can do this, and then they can actually really make a difference and then charge more.
And even really that analogy, you know, this has just stood out to me, you know, that analogy that the bookkeeper's the nurse and the doctor's the accountant. You know, the reality is, I mean, I love accountants. I think they're great. You really need one. But a basic accountancy package when making decisions on your business is probably about as much use as a chocolate tea cozy. Literally, them statutory accounts are not there for you. They're not there to help you. It's too far in the past.
Yeah.
But business owners, they really don't get that. I mean, again, obviously I deal with a part of the market where there's problems and everyone's always looking, people can want to blame someone. And the first thing, because when I get in, I'm like, right, okay, what's going on? List of debts. Can I have a look at a balance sheet? Can I have a look at a P&L? Well, my last set of accounts were 12 months ago. I'm like, well, that is no use to me today. And it's like, well, my accountant doesn't give me this. And I'm like, do you ask for this? Because people don't get what you pay an accountant for.
They don't know what to ask for. Like, and I think this is the thing. Like when, and I think this is the challenge with selling bookkeeping services, that people see their finance function as a compliance tick box, which is a cost every year. And what you do is basically you pick up the pieces when they haven't invested in the finance function as an asset of their business. So, you know, if you're doing good bookkeeping or you've got a team who are on top of the numbers all the time and the cash flow particularly, you're going to know where you are and you can ask the right questions. But we don't know. And I think this is the thing, you know, you saying what's the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant. This is where it's such a grey area that even in our profession, people don't know. But I can tell you from a background in, like, I trained as an accountant. I'm an ACCA accountant. I trained in local government. I worked in industry. And then I became what I called, in inverted commas, a freelance bookkeeper when I had children at home, because I didn't feel like I could go back to my work full time. So then I sort of had to learn to do bookkeeping. And what I found I went through all of the bookkeeper training, even though I was a qualified accountant, because I didn't believe in myself and my ability. I said I'd never worked in practice. I had to learn all this stuff. Like, it was like I was punishing myself for like taking this decision to be self-employed. And the things I learned as an accountant, like, I think back to my finals, and I can remember creating consolidations of international companies with subsidiaries and shareholdings and, you know, all this stuff. When, as a bookkeeper, are you ever going to do that? Like, there's no one in practice who's probably ever going to touch anything like that. The bookkeeping is about the day-to-day finance function. And actually, in practice, when we talk about accountancy practices and bookkeeping practices, there is a lot of crossover, and there are a lot of bookkeepers who are at level 4 who can also file your micro entity accounts, which is a lot of your clients. So it's not really about like the qualification or what you call yourself. It's about, and the client doesn't care about that. The client cares about, is this finance function being invested in properly? Have they got the right information to make the right decisions? So you're never going to get a phone call, Chris.
In an ideal world, or if I get the phone call, it's quite far in advance. And I mean, let's dig into that. So we've got businesses out there that, like, you talk of a finance function, and that's going to be a real, like, what do they mean, a finance function? Because we go out there, we've got accountants, we've got bookkeepers, we've got freelance FDs, we've got CFOs. There's another question. What's the difference between what you ladies do and a fractional finance director, or a fractional CFO?
Yeah, Chris, I actually when I started my firm in 2019 and let my community watch, my business was called Jo Virtual FD, because when you take the bookkeeping and you use the reporting and you sit down and have a conversation, that's an FD. If you have the ability to have a conversation with the accountant and say, what's the plan for next year? What are you thinking? Let me put that into real everyday, like, planning, and let me report on that and track KPIs. That's an FD. So that's what I call myself. I felt, actually, it's funny, I felt a lot more confident to call myself a finance director than an accountant, because that's really, it's the business side. It's like, what we're going to do with this information. Let's have a conversation. And you don't need to have the answers. That's not the point of an FD, to always have the answers. It's to present the data and let the people around the table know what's going on, and then they make the decisions. They're running the business. It's their decisions. You're just going to report on it and come back and let them know how it's going. So that is the difference there.
A thing that you touched on is seeing the finance function as an investment, as opposed to a cost. And I remember when I was starting a business once, and like, it was, I don't know whether this is going to work or not. I had my assistant who'd been with me for a while, just a great all-rounder, and I've been quoted like 400. I'm embarrassed about this now. This is the truth. I was quoted 400 quid for the bookkeeping, and I'm one of those guys that I think I'm going to end up in a skip, like, it's all going to go wrong, and I'll be there with 4 kids in a skip. So I'm penny pinching, and I says, what you like at Zero? And she's sort of like, I'm okay. I'm like, you can do it, can't you? You can do it. Anyway, we've done it for a year. And then I'm on this here, I'm thinking, that just doesn't look right. And it cost me an arm and a leg for the accountant to go back and tidy up. And bless her, she just did what I'd asked her to do. I can be really persuasive when I want to be. So I've been there. I really have. I've made those mistakes. And one of the things that has helped me is just those basics, like a monthly profit and loss, like understanding my cash, understanding that, what's in the bank isn't the businesses. Some of it's corporations, that some of it's VAT. So can we get into that? Like, what are the biggest mistakes that you see business owners make around this type of thing?
It's so funny you said this, because I had a call this week from a friend of mine and Zoe's. She's a multimillionaire. She lives in Switzerland, and she said to me, "Can my really good admin person do my zero for me? Because in Switzerland they want to charge 150 euros an hour for a good bookkeeper or something." And I was like, no. I said, what she can do in the process is be the collator of the information from the emails, upload PDFs, if you're missing something, utilize her. There is definitely a use for admin. I'm not saying that there isn't, but that P&L that you just mentioned that you want to see on a monthly basis that tells you your turnover, all your expenses and your profit, then you can calculate your corp tax and put some money away, is only as good as the information that's been put in. And if your admin person hasn't reconciled the bank correctly, hasn't dealt with your income in advance, hasn't done your prepayments, accruals, your depreciation, and allocated the interest for your correct loan payments, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. And that's why you need a good bookkeeper. Sorry, Zoe, go for it.
No, that's all right. And I'm just thinking the other thing is, you mentioned about wanting to see your P&L. Like, naturally, we are finance people, so we're going to want to look at our P&L. But does the average business owner really know what that means for them anyway? And is it too much information? Because what they want to know is, and actually, do you know what? Despite being an accountant, Jo runs the finances for our business with support of our bookkeeper and accountant. And I just want to know, when do we run out of money? If we don't sell anything, how long have we got money for to keep going until we're living in a skip? So, it's really, as a business owner, your job is to find a way to get your people, whoever those people in your team are, to give you the numbers that answer the questions you ask all the time. And one of those questions is, how much money have I got? I'm sure for everybody. So it doesn't have to be about a P&L. It might just be like, how are my sales doing compared to this time last year or last month? Or are my costs rising too much? It's probably a gross profit question, but dumbed down, it might be like, are my costs rising on this particular thing that I produce? That's what a good bookkeeper is going to do, get into the head of the business owner and then work out how to give them the numbers that actually help them make those decisions.
Something you said earlier that I want to expand on a little bit is you don't, your bookkeeper doesn't have to have the answers, but I think for me, I find it beneficial when people are asking me questions. As like the owner of the business, I'm the easiest person to bullshit. But when someone outside is going, well, what's happened there then? Well, you said you were going to be here and you're there. And actually having that degree of, accountability. So it's because I know that scares a lot of people, because it scared me. It's like literally, I like to say that, I'll do whatever it takes to be successful, but I never used to like being questioned. I would take it so personally. So when do you two still work with people, or do you just advise the bookkeepers now?
So Zoe's practice, she closed that in COVID and made a decision because of the way some of her clients were shutting down, etc., that she came into our business and worked full-time for Six Figure Bookkeeper. And I sold my bookkeeping practice in August 23. So neither of us are practicing at the moment. That's why we have 13 ambassadors in our community who are all running practices today, who also support our community. But it's very true what you said there. I remember I used to shake while holding a VAT return, thinking, God, this is really a lot of money and they haven't got this money in the bank account, and I'm going to give him this report and he's going to shout at me, and he would. So for me to go,
I don't do that, by the way.
No, but some people do. And so we have to learn how to have, a lot of what we do as bookkeepers is relationship management, and our communication skills need to be good, because And that's why, you know, like how Zoe and I, we've niched into working with bookkeepers. When I run my practice, I niched and worked with salon owners because they were scared around numbers. They were the ones scared of a brown envelope like landing on the doormat. And I knew that I could help them with information and cash flow. And I knew I could talk to them in a way that they would understand, and I could get rid of the jargon and speak to them. And so that excited me. So that is something that Zoe and I teach, is about making sure that you are working with the right clients who you feel comfortable enough to have these conversations with. Now, don't get me wrong. When I was like an employed FD, just before I started my final practice, all the guys, they all were ex-army rugby players, like massive drinkers, sit around the boardroom table, go, "Ray!" And I was a bit like, oh, I don't know if this is I'm going to talk to them about profit and losses, and they're a bit scary. But I managed to, but because the person asking the questions usually is controlling the conversation. So obviously I was you have to be kept, like, I wasn't trying to like bring them down a peg or two, but just like that, like, something's going on here, guys. What do we reckon's going on? Like, asking the question in a way of like not accusing anybody, but learning how to go, right, well, this is what it said last month, and this is what it said this month. What's been going on? And let's have a chat. So you do have to learn. And this is why Zoe and I, all we do is build confidence. Because if you don't have the confidence, you're not going to have these really important conversations. And this is what small business owners need. Because when you are like the leader of your business, and if you've got staff, automatically you kind of take on as well. You know, you don't know everything, but you're pretending that you do. So, and you feel a bit, and I know that the salon owners worked with said, my accountant made me feel so stupid, and I hate speaking to them. I didn't know what they were talking. It was like they were speaking another language. So it's really important that, and that's why there's so much work out there, because no one's going to be the perfect fit for everybody.
How we got into this industry, like you just summed it up perfectly. I had to go through an insolvency in 2015, and like, I'm fairly inquisitive. I was very, you know, I wasn't an idiot. I thought I'll figure this out. And I've gone out to meet with insolvency practitioners, and I left each meeting totally confused because no one would talk to me. I mean, you mentioned before about, I had like people spouting the Insolvency Act at me that didn't mean anything to me. I've spoken to like I was a criminal, like I'd done something wrong. It's like literally it was a boring liquidation because of a market change. And that was the thing that sparked me afterwards. I thought, I can try and help educate people in a way that people understand. And it's been, I'm not saying it's been easy, but like, since that time, we have built like a real loyal following. We've got a really big audience, and you know, we do really well commercially because we just speak to people normally, like that with that bridge. I mean, we've got 6 licensed insolvency practitioners who take the appointments, but the directors need somebody there who's going to talk to them in a way that they understand. And so and that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just hairdressers it's like builders can be scared of somebody in a shirt and tie. Like that's why I don't wear one. Like literally, I have been absolutely rinsed for my dress sense, and that I don't look like someone who works in insolvency. I don't want to, you know what I mean? It's like, it puts people on edge, that type of thing. Why do you think that directors are so scared of the numbers, and they can be scared of accountants and finance people? What's going on underneath?
You know what? People don't go into business because they want to do accounts. I think that's the first thing. And I think the longer we've been in business together, like, and as a partnership as well, you know, Jo and I, we both lead the 6-Figure Bookkeeper, and we have other projects and business interests as well. And something we've really had to learn, maybe because we are a partnership, is how we both lead. And we've done a lot of work into like how we think and why we make decisions in the way. I'm very risk averse, and I think, and you know, having like decided to close a business, I completely understand that. There are lots of other reasons, I think, are the reason I'm an accountant, that are about being risk averse and, you know, wanting to create security for myself. So that sort of thing will drive a lot of decisions I make. And Jo knows that about me. But Jo will be led in a different way with her own sort of background. And she was brought up in an entrepreneurial family. She's one of 5 siblings who are all entrepreneurs. Like, she sees things in a very different way. And I think you've really got to get into the head of the business owner that you're working with. And there probably are people who would like to see an insolvency practitioner who is wearing a suit, but that's gonna, it's sort of like, you know, you're going to find the person who's the right sort of fit for you. But you know, I think we've found, as we've worked together more and more, that we make decisions in different ways. We're inspired by different things. We're interested in different things. And as much as I can do the finances, if I need to, I could sit down and I could put together a set of accounts. I don't need to do that. What I need to do is go and do the things that market our business and bring the money in and create the next new thing. And Jo is much more structured, and she will sit down and she gets a real joy out of like those numbers. I mean, she's a massive visionary as well, but she can sit down and she can make sure that the crazy things going on in my head actually happen in real life. So I think you've got to know what kind of business owner you're speaking to. And when you know that niche that we've been talking about, and you can picture the person you want to speak to, you can change the way you work, or the type of business you have, or the communication style you have, or the clothes that you choose to fit with that particular audience.
I want to sort of just circle back to a lot of things that you teach is about pricing, confidence, value. What is it you're teaching people that they're missing?
We're teaching them that they already have all the answers and they are worth listening to. I think we get knocked along the way in life. You know, I sometimes think if I had the sales skills of my 14-year-old daughter who's trying to get me to buy something else off of Shein, you know, I'd have all this confidence and I'd go in and be able to sell myself. But something happens to us, like when we're young, and toddlers as well, you know, they are so good at like negotiating and getting you to give them that extra biscuit or whatever it is. Maybe the school system, maybe our first jobs, I don't know, something happens and we lose confidence. And for me, I definitely lost confidence after having a baby. I felt, you know, at the time I was very young. I just got married, but all my friends were still at university, and I very much felt less than. I felt less than other people, felt less than the people that I'd left in my audit role, and the friends that I went to grammar school with who were all like training to be doctors and things. I was like, oh, I'm being thrown up on 30 times a day. This isn't like, so think life happens. Now, I mean, you know, I'm so pleased that I made all the choices I did, but at the time we get knocked, and then we go into a space where we retrain and we learn, and there's all these people that appear to be so knowledgeable, and we think, oh, I don't know that, and they knew the answer to that, and I don't, you know, I don't know this, and I can't save this business, I can't run this business, I can't even run my own business, and we have this internal dialogue that brings us down. I mean, then throw in perimenopause. Like, oh my God, like the women in our community, we have got a lot going on, and we do sometimes feel like, should I be the one presenting this information and give him advice? I always say to them, when they look at a bank reconciliation, when they go into someone's Xero or QuickBooks or Sage, they have 10 things of note that they've seen. Oh, that bill's not being paid. Why are they paying that much for that? That's, oh, you've got 2 direct debits going out for that. Do you know you've got those 2 direct debits out for the same software? They've got all these things going in their head, and they keep it all internally, and they think that, of course, they think everyone else in the business is better than them. And of course they picked this up. They don't want to hear it from them. But the truth is they haven't picked it up. They don't know it. And they would absolutely love for you to speak up and share what you've got going on.
I can listen. I can identify with that. Like for years, not the perimenopause part, thankfully. But I remember because my route to this world was really, it just wasn't normal. And I'd be sitting around boardrooms and like with like quite high complex jobs, and I'd be thinking, oh my God, how have I ended up here? I better not say anything. I better not say anything because they'll think I'm stupid. And like I'd have the point, right, and I'd keep my mouth shut. And afterwards, I'd say, you know, we should have mentioned that. And I was right, you know, but I was so frightened of someone going, excuse me, what are you doing here, sort of thing. And like it took me years to actually get the confidence to go, you know what? No, I'm here by merit. And I get embarrassed saying that. You know, it's like it plagued me for years and years, that imposter syndrome. And I think, I mean, obviously, Joe, I really can identify with what you said there. What about you, Zoe? You know, have you ever had that type of issue?
That what you just said about not feeling you can say your thoughts at the table, I definitely have felt that. And I can remember one of my first jobs was working in local government, and I used to have these meetings every quarter with they called them the members. They were like the trustees of the council, and you go and you present the finances, and I'd like written some kind of report, and my boss would present it because I wasn't allowed to present it, and I might go and like write the minutes, and I basically looked like the PA. I'd show up, I felt like the PA, everyone thought I was the PA, but really I'd written most of the report. And I'd sit there and I'd be quiet, because I knew like these were very important people in the room. They were voted in by our like local community. And anything, I was only in my 20s, so I must be stupid or have nothing to offer. I can remember someone saying to me, no one will ever take you seriously because you're blonde and young, or something like that. And it really shapes you. Now, I don't think people realize that this stuff that comes up early in a career really shapes how you are and how you behave, and your attitude to taking opportunities in the future. I do wonder, we've got lots of kids between us. I do wonder how our children will fare, because I remember going on like training about assertiveness. No one had ever said at school about being assertive. It just wasn't part of the like language we used. I just felt like I had to be like aggressive, like being aggressive was the way to be. And I can remember having a bit of time in my 20s where I just thought, well, I'll just be really like bolshy, and which completely doesn't suit me at all. But you know, I thought that was the way, because like the people who were like the leaders, the only people I knew to model were like the men who were more sort of aggressive and got what they wanted. And I thought, well, that's how I have to be, because there's no one showing you the way. So, and I think like we've obviously done lots of like, I think personal development is completely underrated. It's something everyone should be doing all the time. I think maybe our kids are going to come out of school feeling maybe more entitled, I don't know, more assertive, I hope, like confidently assertive. But I think that if you are some kind of leader, manager, supervisor of anyone at work, the biggest thing you can do to help the next generation of whoever they are, bookkeepers, accountants, whatever, is to give them a voice. And because everyone brings a different perspective, you know, Jo, in her practice, Jo's 22-year-old he was your apprentice. So when it was lockdown, Jo's son started working in Jo's practice, and he was the champion for one of the pieces of software. And I'm sure that Daniel brought a different attitude to a piece of software that maybe no one else knew how to use yet. But he also brought different angles on business that maybe you weren't discussing. So it's everyone has something valuable, but we need to, if people aren't feeling like their voice can be heard at the table, our job is to make sure we give them the space to be able to do that. And I think that's what we're doing with bookkeepers, you know, giving them a space to say, actually, I do know stuff and I'm valuable and I'm going to help these business owners. And then our job is, you're saying, what do we do? We give them confidence to apply what they already know, plus a few extra little bits around the sides.
No, you can get inspiration and knowledge from the most unlikely of areas, can't you? And it's like, I know here, like I can be, not as much now, but previously I would be on 8 calls a day. I wouldn't really know what was going on other than what I was dealing with. You know, I'm running after 5 grand liquidations, like literally we have a team that can deal with that. And I'm like, no, I'm that control freak. And then we started to sit down and go, right, what's happened this month? Like what improvements can we make? Where are we struggling? And people bring things to the table I would have never have thought of, like little simple, like I'll tell you a little hack that we've used recently. Like our Trustpilot's mega. Like we are the best. We have the best reviews on Trustpilot of any insolvency firm. Like they're not just. I don't think we've got the highest number yet. We're not far off, but like ours are like War and Peace. Like we've saved the directors' lives. Blah blah. Other firms are great first phone call. You clearly know they've never actually used the service, but we're going out and we're on Trustpilot. We're trying to invite people to Trustpilot because it's better to get it to be done through Trustpilot than just going on Trustpilot. I hope that makes sense. And Emily said, listen, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we send them like so simple, really. Let's send them an email from our email telling them that Trustpilot are going to invite them and telling them exactly what to do. And like the month after we did that, I think our reviews went up. They just went up a lot. I'd have never have got that. I'd have never have got, and if I hadn't took the time out, so like they see things different to me. Like they have absolutely like some type of group conscience every month, meeting what's going on. So I'm going to bring it back to sort of bookkeeping because, and I'm conscious of time. We've got well past half an hour, haven't we?
We certainly have.
What should a business owner look for in a great bookkeeper?
Oh, good question. So you want somebody that can do the job. And very much what you said about, we talk to our bookkeepers about making sure that they have testimonials and that they have either Google reviews or whatever it is that someone else can say, yeah, they've done a good job. And you want to be able, it's a personality match. When I was having discovery calls with my potential prospects, I would say to them, let's have a call, but this is just as much about me seeing if you're a good fit and vice versa, because I know that when I get on really well with somebody, they get so much better service from me, because if they get my personality and we just get on, it makes everything so much easier. I think when we go out there with a scarcity mindset to think that there are hardly any clients and we need to take everybody, that's when we end up working with people that aren't a good fit. Mm-hmm. So look for someone that you get on with. Look for someone that you can be open and honest with. Lots of our bookkeepers have conversations and they post things, and obviously everything is anonymous, but they talk about how they are like the therapist for a lot of the business owners. Mm-hmm. They know everything about their families, their aspirations, their goals, why they started the business, what's going well, what's not going well, whether they need to they want to finish at 12 o'clock on a Friday so they can do the school run and help the missus out, or whether, they've got a husband's big birthday coming up and they're trying to save some money for that. They know everything. You can't have those kind of conversations and have the transformation that you want if you don't get on with the person and you don't have that open and honest. So really, I think it is a personality match. Of course, it is not how much do they charge per hour. It is not necessarily whether they are on some kind of list for a professional body. They need to be with a professional body, but you don't need to pick an accountant over a bookkeeper or something. There is such a wealth of knowledge, and it's what you need. And actually ask them, what do I not know about my business? How would you come in and help me? And give them the autonomy to be able to come and sit at the table as an equal with you.
Yeah, and I think that if the bookkeeper or accountant asks you questions. So there's a really interesting difference between hiring someone who is like an employee and someone who's going to sit with you at the table as your head of finance, because the person who is the real expert here, and this is where we show value and where we're able to charge more for what we do. It's when we're the person in the driving seat and we're like Jo said with those guys that she was working with, able to lead the conversation and ask the questions. And I would say the other thing is to look for somebody who understands the industry you're in. So if you're looking for a bookkeeper, look for clues that they've worked with other businesses like yours. Even better, that they work with businesses slightly bigger than yours in the same sort of field, because they are going to have, confidentially, some really good tips on, have you thought about doing this? Or they've already used the software you're using, but they know another integration that's going to speed your workflows up for you. Because the great thing about a bookkeeper and someone who's in the detail of your accounts every day, every week, is that they're going to see the annoying things that annoy you as a business owner, and then go, right, let's fix that. They're not going to be the person who at the end of the year goes, oh, here's your accounts 9 months after the year end. They're going to be like, God, this is annoying. I'm sure there's a way we can integrate with that will streamline this and remove some of your admin or whatever. So people that understand your business. Yeah.
Love it. Where can people go to learn more about your community or get some support for this from this army of bookkeepers that you work with?
If you would like to come and join our free community, we've got about 26,000 members at the moment. Just go to sixfigurebookkeeper.club. That will take you straight to our free Facebook community. Or you can listen to us on the Bookkeepers podcast, which you will find on all the usual podcast channels, or you can watch us on YouTube. But yeah, just look for Bookkeepers podcast.
Fabulous. Couple of wrap-up questions. Favorite productivity tool for you both?
Ooh, well, ChatGPT absolutely is amazing. Zoe's a whiz. Zoe, I learn from Zoe. Zoe finds out new bits and goes, oh, it does this, and then implementing it. We have started using Asana in our business to really kind of manage the tasks. When you start off and it's just two of you in a business and you're running everything through WhatsApp, and now we have a team and we were still running it through WhatsApp. Asana's been a really great way for us to kind of have an overview of what everybody's up to, what everyone's working on. But yeah, utilizing ChatGPT, and that does not mean copy and pasting what it says afterwards and putting it out as posts. It means just to be able to flesh out ideas and help you like shave off minutes or hours off of the task. That's what I like to use it for.
Zapier as well, a really good tool, connects everything. So yeah, I would say those are the three core things for us.
Okay, one book, podcast, or one book or podcast that everybody should be watching or reading. Question to you both, please.
Well, at the moment, I'm reading Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, which is, I've read Traction, I've read Get a Grip, his other two books in the series, but Rocket Fuel is about how the visionary of the business and the integrator of the business need to work together. Zoe and I have just decided that I'm the integrator and Zoe is the visionary, and I'm really keen to learn how we utilize that to supercharge our business. So that's my book at the moment.
Nice.
That was recommended to me on the podcast before you this morning, by the way. So I'm going to definitely get that. And the same question to you, please, Zoe.
Oh, I mean, I just do what Jo tells me. So I've been reading Traction as well. But I've been reading Confessions of a Pricing Man. I can't tell you who wrote it, but it was recommended to me in our entrepreneur channel. And it is about the behavioral economics of pricing decisions. And it's fascinating in an industry like accounting and bookkeeping, where we need to not price by the hour, we need to price by value. And we spend so much time talking about the problems with pricing by the hour. It's really interesting to hear his stories on why we might have priced in certain ways in the past and how we need to change things for the future. So that's worth a look as well.
It has been an absolute pleasure to interview you both. I'm really grateful that you've joined us. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.